Going. First of all, good afternoon, and thank you everyone for joining us for today's webinar on co-requisite and traditional English composition courses in a live and online format. My name is Danielle, and I'm part of the training and support team here at Hawks Learning. Our speaker today is Professor Emily Maddox of Rowan College, Gloucester County. Professor Emily Maddox has worked in higher education for 15 years. She is an English professor at Rowan College, South Jersey, and the coordinator of 2 English courses, Principles of English Grammar and Reading and Literature. Professor Maddox has also been involved in efforts to redesign developmental English education at Rowan College. We are so excited that Professor Maddox is here today to share all of her experience and knowledge with us. We do have a pretty large audience, I was noticing, so we're going to do our best to get to as many questions as possible. I also have a colleague in here, Megan of Hawks. She's also a training and support representative, and she will be in the background of the webinar today. Megan will be here to help answer those questions throughout the webinar, so please make sure to enter those in the Q&A box. You'll notice that little icon at the bottom, and she will get right to you. If you do have any questions for Professor Maddox, we will save those for the end of the presentation. So on that note, I will go ahead and hand it over to our presenter. So Emily, the floor is yours.
Okay. Hi, welcome to the webinar. I'm going to talk about a little bit about the history of co-requisite education at Rowan College of Gloucester County. And I'm going to talk about the structure and design of Eng 101E, which is the co-requisite course number. I'll talk about the benefits of it, and I'll go over some best practices, and I'll go over what the future holds for the students who are in Eng 101E. I'll go over how we measure outcomes, or will be measuring outcomes, and then what probably most people are most interested in seeing is I'll talk about how to go remote and live online, as most of us experienced in the spring and are probably going to be continuing to some extent in the fall. Okay, all right, so brief history. Prior to the existence of Eng 101E, or Enhanced English Composition 1, we had 3 tiers of developmental classes for English. We had one tier that focused on the sentence level, and then another tier for the paragraph level, and finally the one that went to the essay level. Eventually, we got rid of the sentence level course and had trimmed it down to 2 tiers, paragraph level and essay level. And then finally, we created a super version of the essay level course that would also implement some of the ideas from the paragraph level. And then about 7 years ago, we did away with developmental writing courses altogether, and we created a Principles of English Grammar course for the students who test into the paragraph level, or would have tested into the paragraph level area. And then we created Eng 101E for everyone else. And both of those courses are college level and credit bearing courses. Okay. All right, for our structure. It's a 4-credit class with extra instructional time compared to the 3-credit Eng 101. We have a nice smaller class size, typically between 18 and 20. It really depends on how heavy enrollment is that semester and how many students need Eng 101A. There's always a balance between having too many sections running and having enough students enrolled. Students in Eng 101A have the same responsibilities and expectations as those enrolled in 101. Basically, Our course focuses on the writing process first, critical thinking and reading composition. And then we also introduce the research paper and the research process and analysis, so that they're prepared for Eng 102 and any other course that they take. All right. So the overall curriculum is identical to traditional Eng 101, and that gets more and more enmeshed as time goes on. We have 4 essays. Every student's required to do 4 essays. And typically one would be the narrative or exposition. One would be the comparison contrast or cause and effect or process. And then we end the semester with argumentation that doubles as their research paper. So that works out really well. And then we also have our assessment piece, which is a common in-class single source response essay that every student enrolled in 101 and 101E takes, and usually about a 1-week period. So that's our assessment piece. The textbook, we have multiple options, and you can also, instructors have the option of using the Hawks courseware. And then instructors will choose their supplemental readings. And at the end of the semester, we have oral presentation. All right, some of the benefits. One is we have that extra time, which allows for a lot more flexibility. I'm able to, based on what the students need or where their interest levels are, sometimes I can have take the extra time to give them more guidance on a topic, on an essay that they're working on. I can give them more class time for assignments, or we could work on different class activities or lab time, or we can do a grammar workshop. There's a lot of different things that I can do in that extra time, and that's wonderful. I also have a range of ability levels, which is due to testing scores, but when they take the placement test, and also we had to change the way we were enrolling students for this semester, at least, and maybe for the future, because we had, since COVID changed everything, we had to, some students were able to take the placement test and some students were not. So we had to have a way of enrolling the students.
Professor Maddox, before you jump into this slide, we did get a chat saying that someone was having a hard time hearing you. So if you want to maybe check your microphone, just to be sure that everyone can hear you clearly through the audio.
Okay, let me see.
And we're actually getting a lot of comments from everyone else saying they can hear you fine. So I think you are good to go. Thank you to everyone else. Let us know that she's good. We appreciate it.
Okay, great. Okay, so I think I left off with testing. So testing kind of was a mess. We had probably about half the students that wanted to come in were able to take the test beforehand, and some were not. So I was part of some conversations with advisors and deans for how to get students enrolled. And basically we decided to look at transcripts, look at other test scores, so if they took the SATs or the ACT or whatever they took. And so we kind of made it the best we could. So it'll be interesting to see what happens this fall in terms of students and placement and the accuracy of their placement. So that we will probably see a range of ability level, which is nice because no matter what, everybody's going to work together, and then by the end of the semester, they'll move into Eng 102. A benefit for the student is financial. Rather than take a developmental level class and then do this pretty much the same exact thing in a college level class the next semester, they're doing it all in one semester, and the credits they take in 101E will count towards their graduation and will transfer to other schools. Some more benefits, emotional. One of the first things that I noticed as an instructor from before, when I was teaching our Eng 088, which was the developmental, and then the very following semester when we switched over to Eng 101E, I noticed a major change in the students. They didn't resent the class. They didn't resent me. They didn't, there was a lot more positivity in how they approached the material. So I noticed that immediately. And that was really probably one of the most rewarding aspects of the experience for me. It saves them time, saves them money. They can enroll in and pass first year English in 1 year, rather than take a full year or so of developmental classes before moving into the college level. They knock it out in 1 year, and that will definitely improve their odds of graduating within 6 years, and increase learning. With more time, they can spend it in a purposeful way on the material, and possibly outperform their 101 counterparts in 102. Okay, some tricks I've learned. First, I try to avoid long lecture. The student attention span just isn't there for a long lecture. So I try to have, I'm not as good as a TED Talk, but I try to aim for that quick TED Talk like discussions, and then intersperse my lecture with Socratic questioning, which is effective in small doses, and it will depend on the class. 8 o'clock classes are hard to wake up no matter what, but I try to do more group work and stuff like that. And then this spring, I started posting a bulleted list of everything that was going to happen for that week on Blackboard, which ended up being a really good thing. I had no idea that when I was planning my semester in December, that we would be shutting down in the middle of March, but that's what happened. And so it was really a good idea on that level, but also pedagogically, to have in writing everything that was going to happen in Blackboard. And that really, that made the students much more on top of it. They were more diligent on their work, on the Hawks courseware. And if I wrote something that they didn't understand, they would email me right away. And so that was a really nice change, and that started even like between January and February. I noticed that in the students, so that worked out really well. Okay, more best practices. I usually did quizzes for a long time. Last semester, I started reading quizzes, open-ended and very vague. A lot of times I would ask questions like, what surprised you about the article? These are low-stakes quizzes, and basically they prove to me that the student either read the material or didn't read the material. And so they're not worth too much in terms of final grades. I think that altogether, each quiz is probably worth like 1% of the final grade, but it is much improving in terms of the students reading, doing the reading and participating. We can do class review of courseware if you're using the Hawks courseware. It breaks up the lecture and helps reinforce key concepts. I really like low stakes writing exercises, quick one-page prompts. Sometimes I start the class with them, sometimes I end the class with them. I think I like it better if I end the class with the writing exercises, but I've experimented with both ways. And finally, writing sprints, which can kind of go along with the low stakes writing exercise. It's 20 to 25 minutes of focused writing. You can connect it to a low stakes exercise, or you can connect it to a larger project. Sometimes I give students time to work on a draft for their larger papers. And then videos, when used sparingly, they can also work pretty well. And I had pretty good experience with all of these last year. Okay. I like to bring in the experts. I did a couple of things this past spring. I usually bring in the reference librarian twice a semester, once to go over basic research techniques, and my college has an information literacy workbook that the library puts together. And so they work through that. There's a quiz attached to it. So we do that together with the librarian. And she'll also do a hands-on activity for research and MLA style guidance. This past semester, we partnered in requiring the students to complete and correct a works cited page for their first research essay, and that was excellent because of the way the timing worked out. We were shut down not too long after that, so I at least knew that they would have their research complete for their first essay, and they already had their works cited page, so I didn't have to worry about that for when we came back for remote education. I partner with the tutoring center a lot, so I require every essay to go through the tutor before I grade it, and so that cleans up a lot of the grammatical issues and organization issues, and really helps reinforce the skills for the students, and so that they can become more confident and competent writers. And finally, I used the grammar diagnostic last spring, one of the Hawks tests, and basically the scores were not great, which was good because it told me what they needed and what I needed to reinforce. So I'm looking forward to doing that again in a future semester, probably next spring, and see how they do. Okay, all right. So basically what happens next is most students will end up in, once they take Eng 101 or Eng 101E, they move into Eng 102, which is a literature-based course, and students will have to read and analyze fiction, poetry, and drama. And there will be a research paper at the end. Increasingly, our CSJ has been experimenting with themed courses that focus on business, health science, and science and technology. It basically works the same as the literature-based courses. It's just that all of the readings will have some sort of focus on the theme, and it works out pretty well. There's been a lot of positive feedback from students, and the faculty seem to enjoy it as well. Basically, students who are in 101E perform as expected in 102. A students in 101E earn A's, B's, and C's, and B students do well. C students are sort of in that the middle. Some will do better in 102, some will remain as C's, and then we do have some slippage. And then D students are most likely to earn F's in 102, with very few exceptions. So A, B's, and C's will be a higher success rate than D students, which I think is as expected and consistent with how students in 101 perform as well. Okay, determining outcomes. We're changing up our data practices in 101, 101E, and 102 for this year. Past data has been aggregated through a common assessment. And basically what happened was we had all the instructors grading their individual students. So there wasn't a lot of consistency in the grading, or at least possible inconsistency in the grading. So it's really unclear what the assessment measured in the past. So we're erasing that, moving on. And now we're going to have sample sizes of students, and we're going to have 2 impartial readers, and they are going to, that's where our data will come from the sample size and from the impartial readers. The students identifying information will be removed from their writing sample once they're finished with the exam, and that should give us much better, much clearer results. Okay, all right. Okay, so in March 2020, our CSJ and pretty much the rest of the world went remote after spring break. I'm pleased to say that my students performed consistently with how they were doing in the first half of the semester. And there were a couple of saving graces that just the timing worked out okay. First, I was already using Blackboard consistently. The readings were already there. I had the weekly guides on Blackboard for them. So I was able to migrate the course and migrate them into Blackboard, and that helped them feel comfortable, I think. So that was one thing that worked out really well. The weekly guides, they were already used to looking out for those. So when that became the driving force, that worked out really well. And communications probably should have been number one, because I kept communication up constantly, and I know most instructors did. Really even beginning before the closure, I was able to, just because of the way timing worked out, I was able to have individual conferences with each one of my students in the week before we closed, so that I could talk to them one-on-one, and I would, explain what the rest of the semester would look like, and we could address any questions that they had right there and then. So that was again, really good timing because I didn't plan for that. It just kind of happened. And I just kept up with the communication. I used announcements, email, whatever I could do to communicate with them regularly. And I think that really did make a difference in keeping the students enrolled and engaged with the class and completing their work. So I definitely value communication. And finally, there existed a natural transition for me and for them. The first half of the semester is very lecture intensive and reading intensive, and the second half of the semester is more on them and their writing and their projects. So it was a pretty smooth transition for the students and for me to move from face-to-face to online, where they were able to work on their projects independently, and then I would guide them from afar. So that worked out really well as well. All right, so fall 2020. My college has implemented a live online format, which means that probably, I don't have the exact number, but I can safely say 95% of all classes will be live online in 2020. The other classes, the other 5% will either be traditional online, meaning asynchronous, or there are a couple of classes, not English, that have to meet face-to-face, nursing, and things like that. They just, if there are labs involved, they have to be face-to-face in some capacity. But mostly everything will be live online. So that basically means live lectures via Zoom, and Zoom is what the college has chosen as the web conferencing tool, but you can do the same with any web conferencing tool. Last semester we used Blackboard Collaborate. So the college is switching to Zoom, and it seems like it's working out pretty well. And basically the course is going to be, everything is in Blackboard. Zoom is integrated into Blackboard. All of your assignments, your tests, discussion boards, whatever else will be right there in the Blackboard. Students will log on, they'll click on the Zoom at the time of our meetings, and then they will, we can do everything that we would do in a traditional classroom environment, or mostly everything. Including breakout sessions. I can have lab time. I can do my writing sprints. I can do a lot of different things with that. So I'm excited to see it. And like a traditional online course, any other work will be due online. So I'm excited and curious, and this is going to be a great experiment. So I have that positivity in place. I think it's kind of the best of both worlds. I'll have that time and flexibility of an online environment, but I'll also be able to guide my students and communicate with them regularly and provide regular lecture. And I think that'll hold the students accountable more. And also we are going to have a laptop program, so students will be able to purchase either through financial aid or however, laptops that will give them access to everything that they need, which is great because that means there won't be any more issues with accessing the materials or using Microsoft Office or submitting to Blackboard or anything like that, and any other of the issues that there used to be will not exist anymore. So I'm really excited about that. And so that's all I had. I'm happy to open it up for questions.
Hi, Emily. Thank you. So as you were going through, we had a lot of good questions, and a lot of them, excuse me, are related to people wanting to know a little bit more about some of the things that you do and that you mentioned you use. So I'm going to be kind of jumping between the ones that are in the Q&A as well as ones that were submitted in the chat.
Okay.
One question that was asked, 101E is a 4-hour course itself, or 101E plus Principles of Grammar equals a 4-hour course?
Great question. Those are two separate courses. So Principles of English Grammar is one 3-credit course, and then 101E is a 4-credit course. And a lot of students don't have to take Principles of English Grammar. So a lot of students will go right into Eng 101E, and then they will move right into 102 after that. The Eng 107 is for students who need a little bit more. They're not quite ready for the college level essay based on their placements test.
Awesome. And then the next question that came in, and I'm going to try and go through your presentation just so they're following in order. The next related to the assessment, that initial assessment that you mentioned, and people were asking if you use a rubric for that, or how you kind of assess that.
Yes. Yeah, we use a rubric. In the past, we had, when the instructors graded them like they would any other essay, they would use, we have a rubric already set up with the, in the syllabus, in the standard syllabus. So the professors would use that rubric. And then my colleague and I, the two coordinators, we would adapt that rubric. And it was basically everything that you would look for in a standard college essay that you could grade quickly. The idea of the assessment was that it would be a five paragraph essay that students can write in 80 minutes, and that instructor could grade in 5 to 10 minutes, right? So it wasn't meant to be this long essay. It's a quick sample of the student's ability. And so the rubrics included things like thesis statement, topic sentences, proper support, a little bit with grammar, and proper citations. So those were the things that we looked at the rubric, and that made it as objective as possible.
And then one question that followed, when you were mentioning those shorter low stakes quizzes that you administer to students, where on the Blackboard platform do you put those quizzes?
So when I was face-to-face, I wouldn't actually put them on Blackboard. I would just post them on the top of the room. Now what I'll do is under Blackboard, you can create an assessment, and then I would just create a test, and I would use the short answer version for that, and then I would and then they would take that. And I've used that a couple, that's what I'm using now over the summer, and that's what I'll use in the fall.
Okay. And going off of that, people are interested in the writing sprints that you mentioned, and then the exit test that you're using for the course.
Okay. All right, so the exit test will be that final assessment essay. It usually happens during the last 2 weeks or so of the semester, and that works out pretty well. So basically what happens is every year we have a common reading that we give the students, and we talk about it with the students. And then on the day of the assessment, they would come in, I would give them the prompt, and they would sit down at a computer and they would type up their essay in 80 minutes. So we can do pretty much the same thing online. Whereas instead of handing them the prompt when they come in, I will post the prompt under the assessment on Blackboard, and they'll log on, they'll click on the assessment, and then they will have 80 minutes once they click begin to type it up. So it works out pretty well. I did it both ways in the, actually I did it remote in the spring, and that worked out fine.
Awesome. And a question going off of that just came in, is this a pass-fail test that determines if they can exit the course, or is it just counting as a percentage? What percentage do you count it for towards their final grade?
For a long time it was 20%. Now it's down to 15%. And the argumentation, which is their research paper, counts much more. That counts as 20%. So I feel comfortable with that. I don't want, that's why I didn't like math. I didn't like having my entire grade depend on one thing, one test, so no, usually the scores on the essay are consistent with their scores on the other essays, so it ends up working out the same anyway. But I didn't want to create a situation where a student who, because we do have students with test anxiety and or just the inability to perform under extreme pressure with their writing, and I didn't want to create a situation where they couldn't pass based on that one.
Awesome. And then can you explain those writing sprints to us?
Yeah, writing sprints are a lot of fun. It took me about a semester or two to kind of work it out with the students. But basically what I do is if we're in the classroom, and I think I'm going to do the same thing live through Zoom, I'll do a screen share. And basically I Google a timer, and I set the timer for either 20 minutes or 25 minutes. And you can really use it in multiple ways. Sometimes I like to give them a topic and just write and do that. And then they will go off and write. They can do it by hand, or for this semester they're going to type everything. So either way works. And sometimes I'll have it linked to, like when they write their argumentation, I might have them work on their draft for 20 minutes. So that works. It kind of helps with overcoming writer's block, and it also helps with time management, because a lot of times students will be amazed about how much they can accomplish in that 25-minute block of time. So if they like that kind of thing, I encourage them to continue that on their own. So it works in a couple different ways.
Yeah. And a question that came in related to this, for these writing sessions, these sprints that you're describing, when you're going to meet synchronously this fall with students, are you going to run those sessions while students are in that synchronous time, like if you were in a traditional lab setting?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay. Yeah, definitely.
And then a question came in while you were discussing those exit essays. Everyone is really picking your brain today. I love this. They're wondering if students have a chance to revise and edit their exit essay.
No. That's the only one that they don't really have that chance. And it doesn't mean, that's just what our college did. It's just because of, especially now that I'm going to have 2 impartial graders reading it, there won't really be time for them to revise and edit it. So it's not a true we're not going past the drafting stage really with them. So it's not a true measure of the writing process. That's one of the
And then
aspects.
going back to those writing sprints, I had a question in the chat. Are students then posting their sprints to Blackboard? Are they sharing those with you? How are they then sharing what they've accomplished in that sprint with you?
If I make it as part of, like sometimes I do a writing sprint and also the low stakes writing. So in that case, they would share that with me through Blackboard. They could just, they could post it through under the assignment page. I could create an assignment and they would post it there. That's a possibility. Or if they want to show me through individual conferences, that could just be an informal thing. So sometimes there's a grade attached, and if there's a grade attached, they would submit it through Blackboard. If there is not a grade attached, then it would be more of an informal conferences.
Awesome. And that goes back to kind of your low stakes points that you've made throughout. Awesome. And I'm trying to hit on all of the really content-based questions, and then we do have just some logistics questions about the switch to online and what you're doing there. So I'll get through a couple other of the content ones, and then we'll look at those logistics questions.
Okay.
Someone was wondering how often assignments are due. So are you spacing assignments throughout the week, or do you have everything due at the end of the week for your students?
So I'm going to try, and I've read it, you know, both. I've read don't have everything due Sunday at midnight, and then I've read have everything due Sunday at midnight. So I'm going to try having everything due Sunday at midnight for now, and we'll see how it goes. That's what I'm doing in my current classes, and that seems to work out. And I do notice that students will kind of work at their own pace. So for right now, I have everything due once a week, and my weeks are in terms of assignments, they run from Monday at 12:01 a.m. to 11:59 Sunday night.
Awesome. And then someone was wondering if you have any recommendations for a writing diagnostic for the first day of class.
I haven't done a writing diagnostic. Usually, and that would be a great, and I know other instructors who have. So it might not be a bad idea to have an article that's similar. Like if I were to use, for example, for the common assessment, if I were to do a similar type of reading, have them read through it and then write on that first day, then you can kind of see where they are at the beginning of the semester or just at the end of the semester with the final assessment piece. That's a possibility, and I know of some instructors who do that. Usually, I guess instead of a diagnostic, usually I have my students write on a prompt the first day, and so that will help. But it's a low stakes. I count it as a low stakes, but that does work as a kind of a diagnostic. I can kind of see what I'm working with.
Yeah. And kind of going off of that, that actually leads us into another question related to reading. Do you give any sort of reading assessment at the beginning of the semester? And if so, what are you using for that?
Okay, so reading is a kind of a separate piece from this course. So I don't assess reading. I assign a lot of it, and I will teach them like basic reading comprehension skills. And I teach some soft skills in the beginning of the semester, study skills and things like that. But I don't actually assess reading. My college has a separate course for reading. It's called Readings in Literature. So that's where they would handle their the assessment of that.
Awesome. So those are all of the really content-focused questions. And I think with the transition, a lot of people are interested in just the logistics side now with moving to online and adjusting. So we'll touch on those. One that someone asked were your office hours, and how do you extend them for online courses? And if so, what do your office hours look like given that everything is fully online now?
Yeah, so I think office hours are going to be kind of in flux. For right now, I have it in my syllabus in writing that that all office hours are going to be virtual. Classes virtual, everything's virtual until further notice. So what I do, since we are doing that live online format, I'm keeping an actual schedule. I have classes at 8 o'clock. I have classes at 10:30. I have classes at 4:30. You know, Monday through Friday, I have different classes. For class, they're going to log on at those times, and then my office hours are I'm going to I'm contractually obligated to keep 5 office hours a week. So I'm going to set that up through Zoom, and you can have a waiting room set up for Zoom too. So that's what I'll do. I'll log on. I'll create a room for office hours through Zoom. I'll log on at my set time, and students from any of my classes will be able to log on to that same link and enter that same room, and I'll have it set up that there's a waiting room. So I'm doing that a little bit with my summer classes, and that seems to be working. So I think that that'll work, and then eventually I would hope that I can see them in person if we can have face-to-face office hours, but I haven't gotten that yet.
I know, I'm glad you mentioned that Zoom waiting room, because that's exactly what I was thinking of when that question came through. That's a great feature to ensure that you're really focusing on one student at a time in those office hours like you would if you were in person. So that's great. A question related to that is attendance being mandatory for co-rec at someone's college. How do you manage attendance online?
They're through Zoom, and I think through the, like, if whatever your school's using, you know, Blackboard, Collaborate, I think there's a way to keep track of who logged in for your lecture. So that's one way if you're doing like a live lecture through Zoom. If you're not doing a live lecture, the way I count attendance for a traditional online class is basically I look at who logged in to Blackboard, and you can see that last date logged in or last date attended or something like that in the grade book, so you can see that. And then typically in the past, the way we when we have to mark off the never attendeds, we have to do that after the 10th day of the semester. For online, we go by whether or not they did something. So there's a couple ways you can mark attendance. I think it's going to be a little bit more fluid this semester than in the past, because we're going to have students log in and then turn off their video and disappear. So there's ways that you could do polls through Zoom. You could have a survey, and so that would actually get them a little bit more engaged with the class. I'm going to use a lot more discussion board questions, so that if I don't have a lot of face-to-face engagement through Zoom, I'll at least have some engagement through the discussion boards.
And that leads me perfectly into another question, actually. What you just mentioned about allowing students to not have their video on the whole time and increased engagement through discussion boards, is that how Rowan is encouraging you to kind of deal with the inequities that come with the switch to online and the synchronous classes? Is that how you're kind of handling that, or are there other ways?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. We will be giving, well, not giving, they're paying for it, but the students will have a laptop with a webcam capabilities. So actually, I just got an email of best practices today for students and for faculty for a live online format. And students are encouraged to use their video, but at the same time, if the bandwidth suffers or something like that, or they just won't want to use it. That was an issue I know in the spring with a lot of faculty. The students would not want to use their video. So it's going to depend on what,
Yeah.
how their internet is, how reliable their internet is, and giving the students a computer is one thing, but can they access the internet is another. We have we've extended our Wi-Fi access to the parking lot of the college, so students, even if they're not going to class on campus, they can drive to the campus with their laptop and access our internet that way. So that's one way that we trying to give them.
I think what you mentioned, and correct me if I'm going in the wrong direction with this, but incorporating that discussion board piece and really putting more of a focus of engagement on there, is that how you're then engaging those students that may not be able to join the synchronous course?
Yeah, and I think that's just really how I decided when I was making the switch. I realized that I care more about how engaged they are with the discussions, with their other assignments, than logging on to Zoom and zoning out. So that's sort of how I put that weight on, because even with the polls and the other things, it's really going to be hard to fully assess attendance and participation.
Yeah. And then there are just a couple of questions. Someone asked, how large is Rowan College?
We have about 7,000 students. We're sort of hovering around that. We've been hovering around there. So we have 7,000 students.
Okay.
Full-time, part-time.
Yeah. And that leads into another question about faculty load. Someone shared that their max load for adjuncts is 9 credits per term, and faculty teach 12 hours per term. Is that similar to what you have at Rowan, or is that different?
That's similar. I think when we added 4 credit classes, we have a 4 credit class for a lot of the math classes are 4 credits, and this class is 4 credits. I think we changed the language to 3 classes for adjuncts rather than 9 credits. But yeah, that's consistent.
Okay. And then a couple of attendees are interested about the tutoring center and how your students utilize that and just the setup. So for example, is there a specific tutor assigned to your class? And are you interacting with students about what they focused on in a tutoring session? Just how does that work?
Great question. I actually used to be the tutoring center coordinator, so I have a really good relationship with my center. So you could do all of that at my school. They offer embedded tutors, so they have, which means that you would link a tutor to your specific class, and they stay with you the whole time. So I don't usually do that. Instead, I use the online tutoring features, And since I make it mandatory, I wanted to make it as easy for the students as possible to be able to submit their work. So what they do is they have the option of meeting with a tutor face-to-face, which will be online now, or submitting their paper to the online tutoring site, and then the tutor will get back to them within 24 to 48 hours. So I've had a lot of success with that. And then I've also had tutors reach out to me if they are having, if they need additional information for how to better help one of my students. So we have that kind of an open relationship as well. That happened a couple times over the spring while everybody was adjusting. The tutoring center, they were ready to adjust immediately, and so that I think that was a big part of why we were able to retain the students that we retained.
Wonderful. And then one last question, and then we will let you go for the day. But someone who is teaching a class of freshman students and uses Blackboard just had a Blackboard question in hopes that you could help them. And they're wondering how long you suggest to spend guiding students in Blackboard, and just any advice you have on guiding students in Blackboard.
That's a great question. Even before all this happened and we were face-to-face, I always spent the first day of class going through Blackboard with them. I showed them everything they needed to know, starting with the syllabus for the course. And so that worked out okay. And then when we switched over to remote for the spring, I made a video of myself sharing my screen on I used Zoom, and I recorded myself like I am now, and I shared my Blackboard screen, and I made a guide for them so that they could see everything that where everything was, and how they would access that information. And then the nice thing about having the video is I post it on YouTube, and then I bring it over into the Blackboard, and so that they can watch it as many times as they need to. Blackboard itself has a very good, they have a good YouTube channel, so students can and faculty can see a lot of how to do things. And they also have a lot of ready-made videos that, at least at my school, my IT department automatically puts the Blackboard videos into the course shell. So you may have access to those as well.
Right. Well, we are about out of time. That took us almost right to the 4 o'clock mark. So I just want to say again, thank you so much, Professor Maddox, for doing this for us. And thank you everybody else for joining. I know that this was very helpful for a lot of us, so that's great. If anyone has any further questions, please feel free to reach out to our marketing department. Their address is marketing@hawkslearning.com. And we will be sending out this webinar via email. It'll also be posted over to our blog with all of our other webinars. I hope everyone has a great rest of their day, and we will see you guys soon. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, Emily.
Bye.